Welcome to the England Rugby Pod. Thanks for downloading episode 128. More awards for England hopefuls. Gatland confirmed Lions coach for 2021, and Sarries are champions of Europe again. You're listening to the England Rugby Pod, the rugby podcast that believes England will win the World Cup in 2019. Hey guys, welcome back. Another exciting week in the world of rugby, and to discuss it all, of course, I'm joined by Dan. Hi, mate.
Hello, mate. It's been a good week of rugby. Good day to be alive, actually. I'm trying out a new steak restaurant. Well, it's not a new steak restaurant, but it's a new steak restaurant on my radar tonight, and apparently it is amazing. So I'm pretty pumped by that.
Slight exaggeration to describe it as a good day to be alive, or is it that good?
No. I've never been, so I don't know. But apparently the steak is
good.
Is meant to be that good.
Life-changing.
Yeah. So me and the lovely Heather will be going there, and hopefully we'll have a good steak.
Sounds awesome, mate. Sounds awesome. Should we talk about some rugby?
Fair enough. I wanted to chat a bit more fillet and ribeye, but rugby will do.
Okay, let's do it. Look, the most important thing, well, I say the most important thing, the biggest current thing, of course, is Sarries did a job. They beat Leinster. They're champions of Europe, 2010.
And what a job they did.
Did you get a chance to watch it?
I watched it. Yeah,
it was awesome.
It was great. It was. Sarries 10-0 down, I believe, just came back. Yeah. But their power was unbelievable. Sarries completely deserved that. I thought some of their players were absolutely gigantic. Like Brad Barrett was an absolute ridiculous how good he was.
He was man of the match, wasn't he, as well?
Yeah, and rightly so. Billy had an amazing game. Will Skelton was great. Owen Farrell, I thought, was absolutely phenomenal. I had him back as the best fly half in the world at the moment.
Awesome. I watched it. Billy's great. I just felt like up until he scored his try, it felt a little bit like Billy doesn't have the same impact anymore, and not in a he's not as good, but it looks like people have worked him out kind of a way. Then, of course, he scored the try, and it was, yes, Billy of old. But do you know what I mean? Like, it feels a little bit like teams of, it used to be that Billy picked up the ball and would suck in 2 or 3 defenders and make 10 yards every time he made a break. And for England, it was amazing to see that because he just created so much momentum and so much kind of, forward momentum. And then in recent times, it seems that that's not quite the same, and he tends to get stopped quite quickly. I was seeing a lot of that in the game, and then, of course, as I say, there was that moment where he scored his try to kind of seal it, where it was very much Billy of old. But do you get that impression, or is that just me?
I think you've got to look at the opposition. You've got to look how good Leinster are as a team. You've got to look at how much people realise how good Billy is. And no, I do disagree with that. I thought Billy was immense. I think his carries. Yes, Billy is a he's a marked man. People know what he can do, but the amount of carries he did, it wears them down. And I think his power in those carries was a massive reason for why.
That ability to just keep on doing it.
Absolutely.
Maybe not 80 minutes, because of course the sad news to come out of this. I say sad news. It's hopefully going to sort itself out. Is that both Vunipolas came off injured. So while Billy, being interviewed afterwards, actually said of his injury that if he hadn't gone for that try, it wouldn't have happened. And to be honest, he's probably just been a bit soft. So it sounds like it's not too serious for him. But Mako is out for 3 months.
So I read something that he's out for 3 months. That is big.
It's big. So they're saying he will be available for the World Cup. But he's going to miss all of Saracens' remaining involvement in the Premiership and the playoffs and everything else. And possibly the start of, if not all of, the World Cup warm-up matches in sort of August, September. So literally, he's going to be back in time to be sent to Japan, which for a player of his quality, I don't have a problem with that in terms of, of course you still take him. He's still part of that squad, and hopefully there's no there's no setbacks with his recovery. But it's a bit of a worry, isn't it, that he's not going to play any rugby now until really potentially, his first game in the World Cup.
Yeah, that is it isn't a worry, because I think in that situation, and I may not be remembering this right, but I think it was not that dissimilar to Delalio in 2003, where he'd been out for a while, so he'd played every game to give him game time. If he misses all those matches, like you say, you take him anyway because he's that good. But I think he then has the group stages to get up to, within that time, he can still get his fitness up. And he has those group games, even the ones against, USA, etc., where he can build that fitness to come the knockout stages. He's raring to go. And he won't have had the fatigue of the warm-up match. Not that that's for fatigue, but he will still be fresh. Even if he plays every game in the World Cup, I think he'll still be fresh enough to do that. So as long as it is 3 months.
That's the key, isn't it? Like we hear this a lot. You get a sort of an estimate at the beginning, and it just turns into more because of problems. I mean, we've also heard, to be fair, we've heard it work both ways. So we've seen estimates of 3 months turn into 6 weeks. Probably it's not going to happen here, but if it does, great. But yeah, just the main thing is that he comes back 100% before the World Cup.
So he'd still be back in time for at least a couple of the warm-up matches if it's 3 months.
Yes, he will. I mean, in theory, if it's 3 months on the nose, he will be officially back before the warm-up games, or certainly for the back end of them. But I guess they're just playing it safe and saying approximately 3 months. Maybe they mean that's 3 months post recovery from an op. Maybe he hasn't had the op. I don't really know, but it's not what you want to hear 4 months out from a World Cup. That one of your key players and key kind of leaders is out for 3 of them.
And he is key. You're right. He's a key player. But again, could that be? It could, like you say, it can work one of 2 ways. It could be like he'll come in absolutely firing, raring to go. It could be that he maybe loses a bit of sharpness. I don't think that Mako. I think Mako's a good enough rugby brain, a good enough player, but that won't be. I think the only issue might be match fitness. But like you say, you can build that during the group games. I'm not, at the moment, I'm not worried. But if there's something that says, it may be a bit longer or something, my worry levels will rise somewhat.
Indeed. Obviously, another sort of shout out for Saracens before we move on. The only English Premiership team to have won the European Championships 3 times.
Well done, Sarries. Well done. So just before we move on, something I wanted to say. So last year, Leinster won it. And on the back of that, you noticed the Irish team was stronger. Now, the fact that actually this had a lot of Irish internationals, a lot of English internationals, is this one up? Is this a positive to the England team as well?
Well, not to piss on your bonfire, but we say that following that, the Irish team were noticeably stronger. But I would argue that it was the other way around and that Ireland appeared stronger. And actually following that, if you look at this season and this Six Nations, Ireland were surprisingly poor for what we expected.
Yeah, but I mean, after they won last year, don't forget they went into the Autumn Internationals.
Yeah, that's true.
Where they absolutely bossed it. And that's what matters now this autumn.
Yeah, they beat New Zealand.
Yeah,
so maybe that's the key. Maybe winning means that you go on to have a great 6 months, which is all we need.
That's all we need. That's all we need, brother.
And then they could be piss poor for a year, and then get back to normal.
Fine. Yeah, we can have a year doing an Alex Good and where everyone just wears their tracksuits celebrating being world champions.
That was awesome.
Yeah, I love that.
Speaking of Alex Good, good place to move on to this one. He has officially, we speculated, but he's officially the European Player of the Year. Obviously, a phenomenal individual award there. And surely Eddie Jones has to be taking note. I know we've said this before about players and who have been applauded, but you can't hide from this, can you? If you're Eddie Jones, like, how do you justify not, at the very least, having him in your elite squad?
So I don't have the answer. It's hard to hide.
He is apparently the best player in Europe, but he's not good enough for England. He's not even good enough to get in the 41-man elite playing squad.
So I don't see how he can be left out. I think it was Kieran Bracken who said something like, sometimes even great players, they just don't quite fit the mould of what's been looking to be played. But I think with Alex Good, it's hard to say that what he offers can't benefit.
Well, I agree. And
same with Danny Cipriani.
Even if you don't select him, even if you don't select him in your 15 or your 23, surely you should have the best player in Europe in and around the fringes. I mean, Danny Cipriani, as you mentioned, he's already won Players' Player of the Year. He's also shortlisted alongside Good and 4 others for Premiership Player of the Year, who you would imagine that Good will win that as well, because I'm not sure how you can be the best in Europe but not the best. But I know it doesn't work.
It's European Cup. I think Danny Cipriani will win that.
Do you think?
I think Danny Cipriani's been the best in the Premiership.
So if he does, this is where there's a particular concern for me, right? In the past, we've had situations where awarded players have been unavailable due to playing outside of England. So you had Wilkinson, slightly different in 2013. He'd obviously retired from international rugby. You then had Stefan Armitage in 2014. Yeah. You had Nick Abandonen in 2015. Neither one of whom were available to, they wanted to play, but the rules said no. Yeah. We now have 2 guys. Potentially we have the European Player of the Year and the Premiership Player of the Year / Players Player of the Year, both available, both being considered not good enough or not suitable for this England side. And it's a real concern.
It's hard to understand. I do trust Eddie, and I do trust Eddie's judgment. Don't forget Alex Good. What I'd say with Alex Good is there are a lot of good fullback options. Like, who would you rather have on their day, absolute playing the game of their life? Elliot Daly, Alex Good, or Watson?
I mean, it's slightly loaded question.
It is.
Because you'll say Elliot Daly, right? Because we know that we see him as a world class player, and we've seen him do things for England in recent times that have been awesome. But if you've got a guy who is apparently the best player in Europe, you would imagine that he, on his day, playing the best game of his life, has got to be someone that you have in the mix, at least. And when you consider that, we don't know yet. We don't know what the World Cup squad is going to look like. But, someone like a Mike Brown is likely to be in contention. It becomes a question, like, how does that... It's no disrespect to Mike Brown, but he's so far removed from being in the very, very top flight now. When you have people like Alex Good who... are being awarded for their contribution to this game, at the moment. Like, it doesn't make sense to me how you can justify not including someone that's been recognised by his peers and by whatever governing bodies are making the decisions as being, one of the most elite players in the Northern Hemisphere.
It's mate, it's a tough one. One thing I think that probably is worth taken into account. It's not so saying he's the best player. They're not saying he's 100% the best player in Europe. They're saying he's been the best player in the Champions Cup, which is it is slightly different.
And don't get me wrong, if he'd won this award whilst also being an England stalwart who just couldn't perform for England, you'd be saying, look, for whatever reason, he's awesome for his club, not so much for his country. But since Eddie Jones can only select his England team based on what he sees, that has to be based on performance in the Premiership, or. So I don't understand how Eddie Jones can justify not giving him the opportunity when he's playing that well for club to see whether or not he would be, he could convert that to country. And if he couldn't, fair enough. As I said before, and actually this is probably a better one for answering your question about Daly versus Good versus Watson. I'm not saying that I think he needs to automatically be inked into the starting 15 or even necessarily the 23, but he has to be part of the squad. He has to be there as an option, in my opinion. And it's the same with Danny Cipriani. To not have them as options, it just makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I'm not arguing with you here, mate. I want them both in the wider initial sort of World Cup training squad or whatever it's been labelled as. It's hard to know. I guess it's a case of, and I'm playing devil's advocate here because I am with you, thinking if suddenly you brought in an Alex Good at fullback, does that change the dynamic of the way England are looking to play? Does that change? Look at the pace England are looking to play at. Does he play at the same pace as a Watson or a Elliot Daly? I would argue possibly not.
And yet Eddie played Mike Brown on the wing.
Yeah.
So I think he may not have the out and out raw gas of a Daly or a Watson, but I don't think that's enough to say I don't want to see how I don't want to. That's not enough to say I don't even want to see how you fit in with this squad and with the game plan we have.
I think he's earned. I think he's earned a chance.
Yeah, 100%. And as we've mentioned before, what goes on behind the scenes during training and what have you, there can be factors that we, as the public and the fans, don't are unaware of that result in players that we think should be part of the 23 not being selected. But at least in that situation, it's a decision that's being made based on the way that they're playing with their peers in the England setup. I don't, how do you look at a player and say he's phenomenal for his club, but I don't think he'd be very good for England, so I'm not going to even have a look at him. That's the issue for me. I think Eddie has to be looking at both of them in terms of having them in the training squads, being part of the setup. And if come match day he doesn't want them in the 23, then I'm willing to kind of respect, as you say, respect Eddie's choices and his opinions and accept the team that he plays. But yeah, I want to know that he's taking them seriously, I suppose.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I'm with you. But it's one of those. It's going to be it's going to be, well, it's pretty much impossible for us to know where Eddie's head's at. I don't know. I don't know where Eddie is, what Eddie's thinking, or what he's looking to do. But
are you reading something?
I'm not. No, why?
All right. You seem like you were trying to work out what to say whilst reading something.
No, not at all. Because this whole thing confuses me. It does confuse me, and I'm trying to, in my head, I'm trying to think, what is Eddie thinking? And the truth is, I don't know, because I'm trying to play devil's advocate. So yeah, let's get them involved. Do you think when Danny Cipriani met? Do you remember when he said a small group of them met with Eddie? Do you think Alex Good was one of them?
I'd be very surprised if he wasn't, given what we've seen. And there were obviously various others. I mean that Premiership Player of the Season list includes, it's right here somewhere, Faf de Klerk. That doesn't really help us much. Who else is in there? Corbus Reinach.
Oh, he's been awesome. He's been really good.
Alex Good. Luatua. Kovacic. You've always been a big fan of Matt Kovacic.
I'm a massive fan of Matt Kovacic. I don't think he's going to be. I don't think he's going to be involved. But I'm a massive
Possibly
fan.
Not. But he's another one that's Premiership Player of the Season nominee. So maybe the small group is, look, if the rest of the Premiership sees you guys as being some of the elites in the game, in England, then let's have a conversation. Let's talk about why I'm not choosing you, despite what these governing bodies and things think. So yeah, I would think Cipriani and Good both need to be at least two of the people in that small group. Time will tell.
Time will tell, young man. Time will tell.
I really hope that we see them at least involved in the training squads, because to me, not selecting them for the training squads is taking the piss a little bit. And then, like I say, willing to accept the route that he decides to go down, having had that opportunity to see them all.
Yeah.
Right, let's move on from that one. We have actually
Yes.
covered the whole, both Good and Cipriani have come up, I think, in the last 3
But
episodes.
I think it does deserve. I think it does deserve revisited again, based upon the last
Well,
week.
and the awards that they've won, and congratulations to both of them for what they've got so far, and good luck to both of them, with the Premiership Player of the Year award as well. So you're right. It does.
Who else is up for that? Who else is up for that award?
That's what I just said. Corbus Reinick, Alex Good,
Oh, yeah.
Stephen Luatua, Matt Kovacic, Faf de Klerk, and Danny Cipriani.
So who are you going for?
I was leaning towards Good because I kind of think if you're the best in Europe, you've surely got to be the best in England too, and I think I'll stick with that. But I see what you're saying about Danny Cipriani. I think one of those two probably. Although ironically, Faf de Klerk is in the mix for World Player of the Year, isn't he? Although he didn't win European, so it's a difficult one. But I hope either Good or Cipriani.
Well, Faf de Klerk didn't win European because he wasn't in it. He wasn't part of the Champions Cup, so. So I mean, he can't. And what he's done for South Africa sort of count. It's kind of weird because when you hear European Player of the Year, you automatically assume, they're saying best player in Europe. They're saying best player in the European Cup.
That's true.
So it's a slightly, it's slightly different to saying this has been the best player in Europe across everything. It's just saying this has been the best player in the Champions Cup.
Anywho. We're going to move on. Warren Gatland has been confirmed as the Lions coach for 2021 for the tour to South Africa. How do we feel about this?
Well, so I know how you feel. How do I feel? It's hard to argue it. That's how I feel. I would like to see someone different, but it is hard to argue his results. And actually, I think it might be a good move. I don't think he's going to look to take on another big job before that. Oh, he must actually. That's quite a way. It's still a couple of years.
2021, yeah.
But I think any job he takes on now will be taken on knowing that he's got that time for the Lions. So I think this will be the best prepared Lions squad team, best managed. So I don't think it's a bad. He's been a legend with the Lions as a coach. We can't argue that. Our natural instinct is to not like him because he's been the Welsh coach, but he is a hell of a coach.
But I think it's not just because he's been the Welsh coach, but it's been because of his coaching the Lions. For me, anyway, it's because when he coaches the Lions, he leaves out not just English, but he leaves out players that aren't Welsh in favour of, his boys that he knows, who are, in my opinion, not as good. Obviously, not in every position, but there are regularly occasions where you think, how on earth has that guy not been selected? But he has. So I think it will be very interesting. He'll be 2 years out of the Welsh job.
Yeah.
It'll be very interesting to see whether that has an impact on the Wales factor. But of course, the other big thing, and we've briefly speculated about the possibility of him joining up with England. It seems to be a rumour that's floating around is that there's, it's a very loose rumour, but that the England job might be in his sights. How do we feel about that?
I would like him as England coach.
You would?
I would because the theory being that after we win the World Cup, Eddie stays on for another couple of years, and then I'd like Warren Gatland to take on after the Lions.
Okay.
Or even slightly before, so all the England players go on that Lions tour.
Eddie and Warren working together for 12 months.
I
can't see that.
I don't see that happening. But I think he's a very good coach. I wouldn't be upset if he was the next England coach. The main one for me, which looks like it's not going to happen, I know we'll cover this in a bit, is Sean Edwards. I'd like him to have been defence coach.
For England or for the Lions?
For England.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to it now because, the Gatland thing, there's not a lot really to talk about other than just, our kind of immediate reaction to the news.
Well, before we move on, what are your thoughts if he took on the England job after that? What would your thoughts be on that?
I think we kind of discussed this one the other week, didn't we? And the main thing for me is that England improved.
No splinters.
But haven't finished yet. But obviously, for now, it's about the World Cup. I don't have an issue with Warren Gatland, the idea of Warren Gatland taking over the England job. If that's what they decide is the way to go, I'm not convinced it'll happen.
I'm not.
But I'm actually, yeah. I hear what you're saying about him being the Lions coach, and it makes sense and all that kind of stuff. And you look at Ian McGeechan. He did it 3 times, 4 times. So it's not like it's he's not setting a precedent here. There have been coaches who have done it multiple times. I just feel like the Lions. It's an invitational. I don't know why it needs to be a kind of an international coach that is seeing success at that time. It's a tour. It's quite different. You look at someone like an Eddie Jones and all of the skeptics who say, yeah, he's good for 5 minutes, and he's all about short term. And I know that Eddie Jones has obviously said of the Lions coaching role that he wouldn't want it, but possibly because he knew he wasn't going to get it. But I just think I don't believe that if you picked somebody who wasn't necessarily coming off the back of the form that Gatland has had, that it's detrimental to the Lions because it's a tour. I just think it's a little bit different. It would be nice, I think, just to see the coach change. I almost think they should have a rule that it cannot be the same coach consecutively.
I think consecutively might be okay, but more than twice. I get what you say, but then because it is such a unique environment, does Warren Gatland have such a good insight into that? But you're not playing with the same team every 4 years. So all the players are, not all the players, but a lot of the players are experiencing it for the first time. Why not have the coach in the same boat? So they experience it together and they develop what works for them for that tour, rather than these people coming in and it's like, oh, Warren Gatland, yeah, he does it this way, so you need to adjust to his way of doing things for the next 6 weeks or whatever it is. I don't know. For me, I think it would make more sense to mix it up. Maybe put in place a rule that just says, you can do it as many times as you want. You just can't do it consecutively. And that way you're kind of constantly mixing it up a bit. I think that would be, because it's a tour. For me, that would be more interesting, and it would give other people an opportunity. The romanticism of the Lions, or the romanticism of the Lions. I like that idea, but I'm not. It's not. To me, the Lions is the players. I know a lot's been put on the coach, but to me, the Lions is all about the players and them coming. So the coach side, to me, slightly plays second fiddle, I think.
Fair enough. Guys, get in touch. Let us know what you think about Warren Gatland's selection. Are you happy that he is going to be the Lions coach? Are you disappointed? Are you not bothered either way? Let us know your thoughts at England Rugby Pod on Facebook and Twitter. We can share those thoughts in the future. You mentioned before we got onto the Lions stuff about Shaun Edwards. It's obviously relevant with Gatland leaving Wales. Shaun Edwards is also leaving Wales. Wayne Pivac. Wayne Pivac has actually now come out saying that Shaun Edwards' departure is probably financial, which is weird because they've discussed his contract, so surely he knows it's either there wasn't enough money on the table or there was. So if he's saying that, they're not offering Shaun Edwards enough cash, right?
Well, I mean, maybe Shaun Edwards didn't show all his cards. Maybe Shaun Edwards was like, yeah, maybe I need to change, but he may have just got that impression because Shaun Edwards is probably also aware, having been there so long, what realistically the Welsh could pay compared to what, Shaun Edwards is in a position now where he can go to, I'd say, pretty much anywhere he wants. Obviously not absolutely anywhere, but he can go to a lot of different places. And he knows there's unions that can probably offer him a lot more money.
Well, it's like being a long-term employee, isn't it? If you stay with the same company for a prolonged period of time, you're never going to earn as much money as if you bounce around and constantly negotiate your salary. You always see the people earning the most are usually the ones that have been at 3, 4, 5 different companies and constantly climbing the ladder, whereas the ones who stay behind and are loyal get held back. So it's obviously it's a bit like that, isn't it?
Yeah, certainly, unless obviously you're moving to an incredibly senior position that obviously not everyone can do.
True. I mean, but in Shaun Edwards' case, we're assuming that they wanted to keep him on in the same role, right?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
But he is now being tipped to join up with France, and obviously what you said last week was that the French team have said in no uncertain terms that their head coach will be French. So we assume he's going over there to do the defence role.
That scares the shit out of me.
I was going to say, one of the areas that we rely on when playing France is fairly poor defence, because we know that when things go right in attack, they can be a bit special. So to have someone go in who's proven, who might be able to turn them into a bit of a fortress, is a bit of a worry. Fortunately, it's not a worry for this World Cup, but...
Yeah, well, with the player pool France has and the talent they have, if France can finally get their shit together, they are a terrifying prospect.
Which France will turn up?
Oh, dear God.
Yeah, no, it is. It is a terrifying prospect. But, it's probably a great shout from him. And, of course, as we know, France, there seems to be a money tree in France where rugby's concerned. So I imagine he's about to get paid a shitload of cash.
If he goes to France, he's there. I don't know, and maybe they have been. I have no idea why England aren't fighting to try and get him on board there.
Probably because they've only just brought in a defence coach. So they're probably saying we don't need or want a defence coach.
But have they Mitchell? Have they brought him in? And actually, he's not done badly. He's done better than I thought. Have they brought him in long term, or have they brought him in just for the World Cup?
I don't know, but I was under the impression that he's not interim. He's been hired as England's defence coach.
Who would you rather have, Mitchell or Edwards, after the World Cup?
You'd love to have Shaun Edwards just because of what he's done and what he knows about the Welsh defence. But I also, part of me feels like, he's an Englishman who's been loyal to Wales for 12 years. So, screw you. No, it would be great to have him on board, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. I suspect there are timing issues. I don't think England want... what are England going to do? Just say, yeah, cheers. You do a good job for us in the World Cup, Mitchell, but when the World Cup's over, we want someone else, please. I don't know. It feels like England needs to show commitment. And maybe, as you say, we should probably do a bit of digging and find out if he has been brought on as a temporary coach or not. But if it's theoretically a permanent position, then they need to back him and say, look, we've made the call, we made the decision we've made, and we're sticking by it and we're happy with it.
Yeah, fair enough.
And for all we know, Eddie Jones and Shaun Edwards hate each other.
They might do, they might not. I've never heard either way.
Exactly. Before we move on to the final part of the episode, which is obviously the Premiership, I know we've said we're not going to dwell on it too much, but we want to try and keep everyone appraised of what's going on. Folau has now officially been sacked. He's following the what was it he called for? He wanted to look into the initial decision, but it's been upheld anyway. So he has been sacked. We're not going to dwell on what he said and what our thoughts are on that. We've covered that a few times, and half of Twitter is dealing with that for us. He has, however, said that he's now going to sue or attempt to sue Rugby Australia for wrongful dismissal. So I want to talk to you about the impact a lawsuit is going to have on Rugby Australia 4 months out from a World Cup. Like, this is a problem for them. Have they bitten off more than they can chew?
No, so my understanding, and this could be complete bullshit, and I could be completely wrong. My understanding, they basically offered him $1 million after the first sacking to say that we'll pay you off your contract, and he said no, and then took them back to another tribunal. They found, massive breach of like gross misconduct or whatever it is. Like we say, we won't go into reasons, and said no, you're sacked. So, what is his agenda? He's also said the easy way for me would be to, back down and take the job, and I could make life easier for me, but that would be the devil's work. It's like, Well, if that's the case, why are you fighting it?
Well, I mean, you said we're not going to talk about it. We don't really.
Yeah.
We don't have a choice now.
I don't.
Just quickly then, but the agenda is very simple. I think he has come out and said it, is that he's fully aware that his message, or that some people call a message of hate, that he believes is the message of God. His message gets out there even more. He gets to keep pushing that message the longer he keeps this in the public eye, and I think it's simply put, that is the reason why he's going through this, rather than taking the money and walking away, because he sees taking the money and walking away as kind of him being hushed, and he wants to spread the gospel, and the best way he knows how is to follow this up with a lawsuit and make a big song and dance about it and keep pumping his message out there.
So my thoughts on this is I don't think it will affect the team that much. I'm pretty sure the team, I think Michael Cheika might have said to the team secretly, whatever happens here, I'm not going to pick him, because he's almost in a position where they can't be in sort of no man's land now.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about secretly. I think Michael Cheika came out publicly and said
it's very unlikely.
It's very unlikely he'll ever play for Australia again.
Yeah,
and I took from that to mean that Michael Cheika's not going to select him, but if someone else was to be brought in, they probably wouldn't either.
Yeah, and I get the impression, like, Israel Folau is not helping his country, not helping his team. And actually, from Rugby Australia and from rugby generally, or anything generally, if he won that lawsuit, I think that's a terrible message. It's basically, could people... and I won't go maybe the route I went down, but say like hardcore Scientologists, would they be allowed, if they were playing rugby at top level, would they be allowed to spout whatever they believe, because that's under religion? That's not real. That's not life. So,
well, it's, we have said it before. I'm going to say it one more time. This issue has never been about his personal beliefs. It's been about understanding that there are consequences to the things that you do and that you say. And in this situation, he's made a choice, and he's entitled to make that choice. But it's resulted in what has happened, and that's what he needs to accept. But yeah, the issue is the attention that Rugby Australia are going to have to kind of deal with, that isn't rugby related and isn't World Cup 2019 related, and the impact that may have on Australia in this World Cup. And I guess there are two kind of trains of thought here. And one is, could this take a fairly underperforming Australian side and make things even worse? Because they're apart from anything else, they're missing one of the best players in the world. Or could it galvanise the troops and
exactly
kind of bring something out of them? Because on paper they're still an awesome side capable of competing at the very highest level.
So from a playing perspective, purely from a playing perspective, I think it might galvanise them a bit, but I think that however much they galvanise will be equaled out by the fact they've lost an absolutely incredible player. So I actually don't think it'll make much difference. Overall, on the balance of things, I don't think from a player perspective this stuff is going to make a huge difference, because they'll just, to them it's just noise in the background. They don't care. They'll carry on. I think they probably know what the situation is. I think the loss for the Australian rugby team is the fact they've lost an incredible rugby player. But I don't think any of this sort of noise about should he be fired, what was said, and all that will make a difference. Because even if he won, and even if he was reinstated, I don't believe he'd be selected, because I think would have a massively negative impact on the team because of what he said, because of some beliefs. So I don't think that's an issue. So
I guess the question is: are the team as a group of players going to be closer? We've seen the benefits of that. We saw the benefits of that in the England side when it was clearly apparent that they were a closer knit group, and as a result, they played better rugby. Will this kind of bring them together where they are kind of jointly in agreement, if you like, that his actions don't speak for the entire team, and in fact send the opposite message of what they want to send, regardless of their individual beliefs, because that's what this is about, right? It's about saying, look, as a team, as a sport, the belief system is this. Well, not the belief system, but the kind of the message is this, and we accept that. And as a group, that's the message we are happy to share, and that's inclusion. So will this kind of just make them all kind of pull together and say, do you know what? Yeah, look, guys, we've lost a massively important player in Izzy, but he decided that, you know, our team, our sports kind of message wasn't for him anymore, and we can't let that affect us. And so it kind of almost brings them closer together. I mean, that's what they've got to be hoping, right?
Yeah, and I think to an extent it may even do that slightly to an extent. I don't think that I think it may even slightly help them, but overall I think any impact on the team as a whole is going to be fairly minimal, I must admit. Well,
we shall see in about 4 months' time.
We shall.
Let's move away from all of that. The final thing, obviously, we need to talk about. We did cover this last week, but it's happening tomorrow, and that is, of course, the final weekend of the Premiership before the playoffs begin. Now we know certain things are already cemented. Newcastle are down, so therefore Leicester are safe. We also know that Exeter, Sarries, and Gloucester are all going to be taking part in the playoffs. So the big question now is, will it be Northampton or Quins that joins them? And to a degree, there's the question of who goes in first place, who goes in second place. So the first thing, we talked about this, as I say, last week. Do you think Sarries are going to put out a sub-strength side, given that they've just won?
Hell yeah. Bearing in mind they've just won Europe, and bearing in mind half their players have been on the piss all week. And fair enough, rightly so. I think Sarries will put out a weakened side. I think Exeter will put out a top-notch side. I think it will go Exeter. This is my prediction. Exeter, Saracens, Gloucester, Northampton.
Right, so Exeter are playing Northampton. So Exeter are going to put out a top side, and we assume therefore win. Yeah. So Northampton are going to lose.
I think Northampton will get a bonus point. I think Wasps might beat Quins.
Interesting. That's a big.
It's at the Rico. Yeah, it is a big shout. Wasps are still potentially fighting for top six. I am sticking with the league as it is at the moment. I would actually prefer to see Quins in there, but I just think it might be Northampton.
I mean, I asked you this question last week. Would you rather be Northampton or Quins going into this final weekend?
And I said Northampton, I'm sticking with it. Yeah, I'm going to stick with that.
Fair enough. I have to stick with. I don't have to stick with Quins. It's not because I support Quins, but I genuinely think that playing Wasps, even though it's away, is in the final game and knowing that a win is enough. Well, no, it's not necessarily enough, because obviously Northampton could win. But I think if you're Northampton playing Exeter, who want to ensure that they get the top spot with the playoffs coming up, and kind of give their top boys a final run out before the playoffs, as Northampton, you're thinking damage control. I think you're not. You want obviously you're going in to win, but back of your mind, whether you admit it or not, you're thinking damage control. Can we get a bonus point? I think Quins going to Wasps, it's much more of a, we've got this. This is ours for the taking. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens. But those are the two big games for me. They are the games of the week, or Wood's ones to watch.
I like it. I like it.
Exeter against Northampton, and then Wasps against Harlequins. We're not going to try and debate top six any further than that, because I think there's still potentially. I mean, Bristol on 47 points, Wasps on 47 points, Sale on 50 points, Bath, who are currently in the top six, on 51 points. So a lot could happen, depending on how results go, with regards to 5th and 6th place, or regards to 6th place, I guess, as Quins and Northampton are likely going to be 4 and 5. It's been a pretty formidable season. Not so much if you're a Leicester supporter, but generally for the neutral, which I think I would say, I follow Quins, but I would say I'm a neutral.
Yeah, I think I'm the same. I mean, I'd pick Gloucester above others, but not to a point of
Rugby's the real winner, Dan.
Not anymore. It's not. It's been amazing. It's been absolutely brilliant. I think it's great for the Premiership. I think it's great for rugby. It'll be really interesting to see how that plays out. Assuming it's my top four, So I'm taking Quins out of it specifically.
So as it stands right now.
As it stands right now, who do you want to win it?
I think Sarries.
You want them to win it?
Only because of the World Cup.
Right, okay.
I feel like add to European champions, add Premiership champions as well. And given how many England, not just how many England players they've got, but how many important England players, they've got, I just feel like that's good. But it's gonna, in my opinion, it's gonna be I was going to say it's going to be an extra Saracens final, but I actually think Gloucester might well. Maybe I want Gloucester to win. I don't know, mate. Is the honest answer? I had strong opinions. Part of me does feel like third or fourth place winning there's something not right about it. And when you look at the points difference, Gloucester are currently on 66, Exeter on 81. Let's say that Quins end up in there. They're currently on 55 to Exeter's 81. And if Quins went on to then win the Premiership, you'd feel like there's almost a 30-point difference between them and the people that actually came out on top. And is that fair? But yeah, I think Saracens because I think it benefits the World Cup. But I would quite like to see Gloucester do it.
I'd like to see Gloucester do it because they're probably my favourite team. But if not, I'd like to see Exeter do it because I think they've had the best season. Which
kind of fits with what I was saying. Which is
exactly.
Fair enough. Well, there you have it, guys. So some big games this weekend. It'll be an awesome end to the kind of the final standard weekend of the Premiership. And then, of course, we've got playoffs to look forward to, which will be awesome. Is there anything else you wanted to add this week, Dan?
I don't think so.
Great. Well, guys, look, thanks so much for tuning in once again. We will, of course, be back. I think the next episode we are going to, as promised, even though it's taken a little while, I think Mr. Budgie Jointed had sent us his Barbars team. So we're gonna deal with that in the next episode. But as always, as I say, get in touch if you've got anything that you would like us to discuss or you've got any questions for us at England Rugby Pod or email us englandrugbypod@gmail.com. And if you get the opportunity, as I always say, we'd really appreciate it if you could get over to iTunes, drop us a rating, drop us a review, let us know what you think, and of course spread the word because the World Cup is only 4 months away now, and we want to get as many people tuning in as we possibly can when the competition ends. So we will catch you guys next week, and thanks so much for tuning in.